2 bullets took his son and broke his wife. Now he's bringing vengeance in Gotham with a bullet in every chamber. This is Batman without mercy. Who is Flashpoint Batman? We're about to find out in this video. To start off, Flashpoint Batman first appeared in Flashpoint issue 1. After Barry Allen went back in time to save his mother, he unintentionally created the Flashpoint timeline. In this twisted reality, Thomas Wayne took up the mantle of Batman instead of Bruce, while Martha Wayne went down a far darker path, becoming the Joker. The storytelling, dialogue, emotional toll, and twisted dynamic between Thomas and Martha is top tier. The things she did since becoming the Joker and her interactions with Thomas as Batman, man, I'll just say this, y'all will look at her in a totally different light, but we'll go over her a bit later. For now, let's take a step back into that horrific and yet iconic night in Crime Alley. After exiting the Monarch Theater, the Wayne family takes a shortcut down Crime Alley where they encounter Joe Chill. Joe pulls a gun on them expecting to rob them and reaches for Martha's pearls. As he grabs them, Thomas lunges at him, tackling him to the ground and beating him into a pulp. In the fight, Joe manages to pull his gun and fires, but the shots miss Thomas. Instead, the bullets hit Bruce. Everything stops. Thomas turns to his son now bleeding out, all of his focus shifting in an instant. And in that moment of heartbreak and distraction, Joe escapes, leaving behind another shattered version of the Wayne family. Thomas tells Martha to get help while he tries everything he could think of to keep Bruce alive, but it was too late. By the time Martha returned with the patrol officer, Bruce was already gone. Thomas turns to them, a tear sliding down his cheek, cradling Bruce's lifeless body in his arms. The moment is haunting. In this fractured timeline, the Wayne family has been traumatized all over again, but this time in a far more devastating way. In the months that followed, Thomas and Martha entered therapy trying to cope with the overwhelming grief and trauma of losing Bruce. Thomas tries to push forward, but Martha, she doesn't want to. In fact, the doctor lets Thomas know that she's not even trying to go through therapy anymore. Thomas confronts her gently. She mentions that she misses Bruce, and Thomas replies that he misses Bruce too, and he also misses her smile. In order to reach her, he offers what he thinks might be the only thing left. He offers to find and get revenge on Joe Chill. Through paying the right people, Thomas was able to find Joe Chill, and this man right here, in my opinion, rightfully crashed out and beat his ass to the point blood was going everywhere. This is Flashpoint, so part of me wishes this part was a bit more graphic since it just shows the character outlines here. It would have been a good, not even good, screw that, a key opportunity to show how much more brutal and savage Thomas is compared to Bruce in their journeys to becoming their versions of Batman, where Bruce channels his pain into discipline and restraint, eventually evolving into a symbol of hope for Gotham. Thomas takes a much darker path. Readers who follow the comics know the kind of growth Bruce has undergone since his debut. But for those who aren't too deep into comic reading, a perfect example of that growth can be seen in the 2022 Batman movie, where Bruce starts off as the embodiment of vengeance and gradually transforms into something more, a protector, a symbol of change by the end of the movie. Thomas, on the other hand, he never gets that arc. He lets the pain fester. His darkness doesn't just fuel him, it defines him. Vengeance isn't the face for Thomas Wayne, it's his identity. And the biggest difference, he has no interest in healing, no desire to grow. He just doesn't care anymore. It's effed up but completely understandable on why Thomas is like that. I don't know which is worse, but if I had to pick which is more painful, I'd say losing a child is more painful than losing your parents at a young age. It's much harder to move on after losing your child because you created them, you took care of them, you watched them grow up, they idolize you, and they trust you more than anything to protect them from the dark realities that come with life. To see all that taken away in an instant like Thomas did, you don't get to talk crazy to someone who's lived through that, unless you're really trying to play the game of life and death on hard mode. After Thomas beat Joe Chill to death, he went straight back to Wayne Manor to tell Martha that Joe's dead. But after he told her, Martha slowly turned around and said, "I understand now, Thomas. See, I'm smiling." What horrified Thomas wasn't the words, it was the fact that she had cut her own face to resemble a twisted grin, just like Heath Ledger's Joker. The sight of it just broke him down even more. After that, Thomas had no choice. He had Martha committed to receive advanced psychiatric care, hoping that it wasn't too late. And if you guys and girls are wondering, where the hell is Alfred in all this? It's actually funny that y'all brought that up, and that brings us to something wild that even took me off guard. It's revealed in the retelling of Thomas's origin during the City of Bane story arc, which of course we'll be diving into that arc later. The big reveal is that Martha was actually responsible for Alfred's death in the Flashpoint timeline. It's not exactly clear when, but it had to be before Thomas became Batman. So for now, I think it's safe to assume she offed them after Thomas had her institutionalized and she came back to Wayne Manor as a Joker. That's my theory, since the timeline on when she did it isn't clear. Now, I don't want to call this a full-blown retcon of the original scene where Martha shows Thomas her scars, but let's be real, it definitely feels like a more reworked version that adds some more detail meant to emphasize just how far gone she is. Whether you prefer the original or this retelling, I think this updated take hits harder. Why, you ask? Because it strips away one of the most well-known pillars of the Bat family. In Bruce's world, Alfred is the moral compass, the grounding force, the one person who keeps him tethered to humanity. But here, in Thomas's timeline, Martha takes that away. And with Alfred gone, there's no one left to keep Thomas from going down a darker path. No restraint, no anchor, just pain and purpose. And it removes one of the last things that could have held him back from becoming the ruthless, unrelenting version of Batman he was destined to be. You know what? While I'm talking about this, I'm going to be taking certain pieces from the retelling and merging it with the original from this point on, since it does add a few more details within Thomas's origin. With nothing else left, Thomas became Batman, fully embracing the mantle in the most ruthless way possible. He went on a brutal spree, taking out several well-known supervillains, including Hush, Scarecrow, and Poison Ivy. Interestingly enough, Penguin wasn't an enemy in his timeline. He actually worked under Thomas, running his casinos. These casinos served the purpose, which was keeping a close eye on Gotham's criminal underworld. Jim Gordon was in on it, working alongside Thomas in his war on crime. It was a very different kind of alliance than what we've seen with Bruce. During his crusade, Batman eventually encounters Selina Kyle while she was in the middle of robbing a bank. He had his gun drawn at her, ready to end it, until Selina admitted that she had no one. She didn't care anymore, she was ready to die. That moment changed everything for Thomas, and he lowered his weapon and did something unthinkable. He actually opened up. He revealed his secret identity as Thomas Wayne to her, and not just that, he told her about Bruce, and that Bruce would be about her age if he survived Crime Alley all those years ago. After that moment, Selina became Batman's crime-fighting partner. Over time, the bond deepened into a father-daughter relationship, even if Thomas would never admit it out loud. But actions speak louder than words, and nothing proved how much Selina meant to him more than the fact that she convinced him to stop offering criminals. Even the ones who, let's be honest and blunt here, absolutely deserved it, especially if they're from Gotham. To me, that's funny and ironic that Selina convinced Thomas to do that in his alternate timeline, considering she doesn't mind doing it if it really comes to that point in the regular timeline with Bruce. Hell, maybe Selina is more like Bruce than we thought in the regular timeline, but then again, it depends on the circumstances. I'll leave that up for debate. Sadly, Selina didn't last any longer as Catwoman, as Martha pulled a killing joke on her and paralyzed Selina for life. And to add salt to the wound, Selina's condition was actually worse than Barbara's. Her entire body was paralyzed. That moment shattered Thomas, and it sent him spiraling right back to offering criminals without hesitation. But Selina, resilient as ever, didn't disappear. She became the timeline's version of Oracle, helping Batman from behind the scenes. When Joker later kidnapped Judge Harvey Dent's children, Thomas took the case personally. To track her down, he went after a criminal named Yo-Yo, demanding answers. But when Yo-Yo claimed she didn't know where the Joker was, Batman threw her off the rooftop, only for Cyborg to swoop in and catch her mid-fall. Cyborg tried to reason with Batman, asking him to join a team of heroes assembled to stop the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, a war that had already claimed countless lives. According to Cyborg, Batman was the best tactician in the world. With him on their side, they might stand a chance, but Batman refused. He told Cyborg that with the team he had, there was no chance, and just like that, he walked away. Back at the Batcave, Batman returned to find Barry Allen snooping through his things, trying to piece together what happened to Batman in this timeline. Without hesitation, Batman stormed in, grabbed Barry, and threw him across the room, demanding answers. Barry tried to reason with him, calling him Bruce. That name stopped Batman for a brief moment. He stared at Barry, then told him that he watched Bruce die that night in Crime Alley. Barry's eyes widened with a shock as the realization hit him. The Batman standing in front of him wasn't Bruce Wayne, it was Thomas Wayne. Batman continued to beat on Barry, thinking he was some kind of twisted trick sent by the Joker. But suddenly, Barry was hit with a wave of memories, flashes of reality not quite his own, flooding into his mind all at once. As he struggled to regain his footing, Barry's flash ring slipped out of his pocket. Desperate to prove he was telling the truth, he held it up as evidence. Thomas watched as Barry activated the ring, expecting his flash suit to come out, but instead, a reverse flash suit popped out. Barry's entire demeanor changed. His confusion now turned into dread. He suspected it now. Reverse Flash had tampered with the timeline, and this twisted world was the result of that interference. After regaining his composure, Barry explained everything to Thomas, about Eobard Thawne, about his own origin before becoming the Flash, and most importantly about Bruce. That, in the original timeline, Bruce survived Crime Alley that night. It was the one who became Batman, not Thomas. Batman, with more and more curiosity in his eyes, asked Barry if he could undo this timeline in order for Bruce to survive, and Barry confirmed that he can, but only if he could regain his speed. He needed the Speed Force to find Thawne and figure out how to fix everything. That moment changed everything for Thomas. For the first time in years, he felt something that he thought he'd lost forever: hope. And with that, he committed himself to helping Barry with everything he had, because if there was even the slightest chance to bring Bruce back, he'd take it. Luckily for the both of them, there was a thunderstorm outside, and Thomas had the right chemicals to help Barry regain his abilities and become the Flash again. And let's just say the first attempt failed, very miserably. Barry was severely burned, and Thomas had to put out the fire. With Barry knocked out, let's take a dive back into Thomas's search for the Joker, since it's safe to assume this story takes place while Barry's recovering, and Barry needs a lot of time to recover, let me tell you. Thomas asked Jim if there were any leads on where the Joker might be hiding, but there was still nothing solid yet. However, Jim did mention something disturbing. Homeless people have been going missing across the city. Determined to follow up on it himself, Thomas took to the sewers to investigate. The deeper he went, the darker it got, both literally and figuratively. Eventually, he found them, a group of homeless individuals huddled in the shadows, but something was horribly wrong. Each of them was missing limbs, like one person was missing a hand and the other was missing a foot. Killer Croc soon appeared out of the water and attacked Batman. Croc lunged at Thomas and tried to drown him in the sewer water, but Batman fought back with everything he had. Using the last of his strength, he managed to stab Croc in the head, taking him down and saving the homeless people trapped behind them. Man, that's just disgusting. And just imagine all that piss, crap, and whatever else people flush out a toilet in that sewer water. To make things even worse, Thomas even opened his mouth when he was drowning in it too. That's just beyond nasty. I can't, not me. Never in my life. Besides that brutal moment, well, brutal and disgusting moment, let me correct myself on that. Y'all gotta admit, it's pretty impressive that Thomas managed to take down Killer Croc at his age. That's no small feat, especially considering how savage and strong Croc is. Soon after, Batman resumed his relentless hunt for the Joker. He called Selina to check in on any leads she might have uncovered, but during their conversation, they both came to a realization that Jim had gone after the Joker alone. Without hesitation, Batman raced full speed to the Joker's location, which was Wayne Manor, but he was too late. The Joker had already gotten to Gordon, triggering him into accidentally shooting Harvey Dent's daughter, Debbie Dent, and in the chaos that followed, she slit Gordon's throat, offing him instantly. Batman ran straight for the kids and was able to save Debbie. Joker lunged at Batman and kept hitting him over the head relentlessly with a hammer. It came to the point Batman grabbed her and they both flew out the window. Joker tried to run from him while taunting him, but Batman caught up to her. And the dialogue here holds so much weight with the tone and atmosphere here is so amazing. Martha, overwhelmed and unraveling, says she wishes Thomas didn't exist, but Thomas doesn't flinch. He looks at her in response, really? Even if that means you don't exist either? Alright, so check this next part out. So he begins telling their story, cutting deep into their past, and he says, "Old times, Martha. A man and a woman and their only son cut through an alley after the movies." Martha, trembling, yells for him to shut up, but he doesn't stop. He only continues the story. They get mugged. 2 shots are fired. Bang, bang. "No," Martha screams, trying to block it out, but Thomas finishes the story, and it's not what she expects. He continues, "The man and the woman fall dead. Their son lives." That dialogue alone just tells you how deep their scars go, and you can feel their pain bleeding off the page. Whether you're a hardcore Batman fan or someone just following along, that moment hits. The tragedy and pain both of them feel even after all these years, just like their son in the original timeline. Both Thomas and Martha never left that alley. Behind the mask and makeup, they'll always be the grieving parents that lost their son in Crime Alley. And it's everything that makes Flashpoint Batman one of the most emotionally complex takes on the character. Thomas begins to explain to Martha that he has a chance to bring back their son by rewriting history and erasing his timeline. But before making that choice, Thomas asks Martha what she thinks. He wants her opinion. He needs it. Martha takes a quiet, reflective moment, and then with tears in her eyes, she simply says, "Promise me, Thomas, you will." Thomas looks at her, unwavering. "I do," he replies. And in that quiet moment of shared grief and hope, they share a kiss. Martha then asks what Bruce does after they die, and Thomas gives her the answer that broke her. Bruce follows in his father's footsteps and becomes Batman. This caused Martha to run from Thomas. He chases after her, calling out, but she's not listening. She's too far gone. Then tragedy strikes again. She slips and falls into the same cavern Bruce did as a child, the very one that led him to the Batcave. But unlike Bruce, Martha doesn't survive. She dies instantly, and with that, yet another Wayne is lost, leaving Thomas truly, painfully alone in this twisted timeline. Going back to Barry, he finally wakes up in the Batcave fully bandaged up. He tries to get back up, but Batman urges him to lie back down due to him having third-degree burns on 3/4 of his body. Barry refuses because he's constantly getting memories of the Flashpoint timeline flooding into his mind, and he doesn't want to forget the original timeline. He pleads with Thomas for one more shot to try again at regaining his powers. Batman soon helps Barry back up to the roof of Wayne Manor, determined to make it work this time. They set everything up once more, and as the storm reaches its peak, a massive lightning bolt crashes down, striking Barry directly. The surge is violent. The force sends Thomas flying off the roof, knocked back by the explosion of energy. But it worked. Barry's eyes snap open, and a familiar crackle of Speed Force energy surrounds him. The Flash is back, and Batman's life has just been saved by Flash. With Barry back in his original Flash suit, he and Batman got to work, trying to gather any allies that could help him reassemble the Justice League and stop the war that's tearing the world apart. Unfortunately, Hal Jordan was a no-go. In his timeline, he never received the Green Lantern ring. Superman does exist in the Flashpoint timeline, but his story is very different than what we're used to. Instead of crashing in Kansas, his ship landed right in the middle of Metropolis. The government got to him first and locked him away in a top-secret facility, hidden from the world. To break him out, Batman and Flash needed help, and that came in the form of Cyborg. With his help, they managed to reach Superman, imprisoned behind a massive vault. And man, when they found him, he looked like a damn stick figure. Pale, frail, and starved of sunlight. Definitely not the symbol of hope we're used to. They freed him, and the group escaped the facility. As they emerged, the sun beamed overhead. It was the first time Superman had ever seen it. He absorbed the solar radiation instantly, and just like that, his powers kicked in. But instead of standing tall with the other heroes, Superman panicked. Overwhelmed by everything, he flew off, leaving Batman, Flash, and Cyborg to deal with a wave of soldiers closing in on them. With the help of Element Woman, basically this timeline's version of Metamorpho, the heroes were able to defeat the soldiers. But just as things seemed to settle, Barry started getting hit with another wave of memories from this timeline, threatening to overwrite everything he knew. Batman, already prepared, handed him a syringe to help slow the effects down, giving Barry just enough clarity to stay focused. The heroes regrouped with the rest of Cyborg's team, which now included the Shazam kids, but the situation was getting even worse. News reports showed that the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman was reaching its peak, on the verge of global annihilation. Barry pulled Thomas aside and basically told him that they need to stop this war. Whether or not they find a reverse Flash, they need to stop this war before the entire world is gone. But Thomas didn't care, not at all. In his mind, if they couldn't find Thawne, this world deserved to burn. That's when the rest of the heroes stepped in, siding with Flash. They couldn't sit by and watch more innocent lives be lost. Finally, Flash got through to Batman, and while walking away, he said Bruce would have come. That was enough for Batman to follow them. After arriving on the battlefield, Batman fought alongside the heroes, taking on both the Atlanteans and the Amazons in the middle of their chaotic war. But things took a turn when Reverse Flash suddenly appeared, immediately giving Barry a brutal beatdown. That's when Thawne dropped the bombshell that Barry was the one responsible for all of this, by going back in time to save his mother. Barry had unknowingly created a ripple effect that fractured the entire timeline, changing everyone's lives. Just as Reverse Flash was getting the upper hand, Batman threw in a flash grenade, temporarily starting Reverse Flash. He heard everything. Turning to Barry, Thomas told him plainly, "You did this, then you can still fix this. We just need to take Thawne out of the equation." But Reverse Flash wasn't down for long. He reappeared and went straight for Thomas, relentlessly beating him into the ground. Barry jumped back in, but even together, they were no match for Thawne's speed and power. And of course, Reverse Flash couldn't resist delivering that classic villain monologue. He gloated, he taunted, but couldn't pay attention to who was behind him. He gave Batman just enough time to drive his sword straight through his chest, silencing him in an instant. Near the end of the fight, Batman was blasted by Enchantress, and Atlantis released a world-ending bomb that completely turned the tide of the fight, taking out anyone in this way. With barely any time left, Thomas told Barry to run and gave him a letter he wrote for Bruce to read before passing out. Barry soon started running back in time and fixed the entire timeline, putting everything back to normal. That's what I would have said if Dr. Manhattan didn't preserve the Flashpoint timeline. The next time we see Thomas is during the Batman and Flash mini crossover event titled The Button. Thomas lost all hope since his timeline didn't get erased. The Atlanteans and the Amazons were now hunting for him. Apparently, Wonder Woman and Aquaman came to an agreement to hunt down Batman together. That alone should tell us how dangerous Thomas is. Both parties from opposite sides of the war came to an agreement to hunt down one man. He sat in his chair waiting for their arrival until both Bruce and Barry accidentally arrived in the Batcave. Bruce was surprised when he saw Thomas in his Batsuit speaking to him. Jason Fabok cooked in this issue with the artwork. It blends so well with the emotional dialogue between Bruce and Thomas and what's about to happen. If you guys and girls want to read the issue yourselves, it's Batman issue 22, The Button Part 3. At first, Thomas thought this was a trick, but Barry let it be known that it was no trick. He noticed Bruce couldn't look him in the eyes, but their conversation had to wait when they saw the Amazons and the Atlanteans storming into the Batcave. Thomas planned to hold them off while Bruce and Barry escaped, but Bruce didn't agree to that and wanted to fight alongside his father while to give Flash time to rebuild the cosmic treadmill. Both Bruce and Thomas had questions for each other, but they had to save them until after they defeated the threat. And yo, this panel was so dope. As a Batman fan, this is one of my top Bat family moments. Just think about it. Who would have ever imagined Batman would come face to face with Flashpoint Batman? Especially after that emotional moment where Bruce read Thomas's letter. After the battle ended, Thomas quietly asked Bruce if he remembered what he said to him when he rescued him from the Batcave after he fell in as a boy. Bruce paused, then said he couldn't remember. Thomas had been whispering and he didn't want to scare the bats. That moment, the look Bruce gives his father says everything. You can feel the flood of emotions hitting him all at once, buried behind a cowl. Pain, nostalgia, longing, and the weight of everything unsaid. Meanwhile, Flash had just finished preparing the cosmic treadmill and was calling out, ready for both Batman to hop on so they could escape the Flashpoint timeline. But right as he said it, everything around them began to fall apart. Dr. Manhattan was letting his timeline go. With barely any time left, Bruce turned to his father. He had something to say, something he needed to say. He told Thomas that the letter he wrote was the greatest gift anyone had ever given him, and if he had to respond with just one thing above everything else, it was this: "You're a grandfather, I have a son." Man, that just hit. He didn't even have to say Damian's name, just the truth that Thomas's legacy didn't end in tragedy, that Bruce lived, loved, built a family, and Bruce wanted his father to come with them so he could be a part of that family. But Thomas refused. With a final push, he shoved Bruce onto the cosmic treadmill with Barry and told him, "Flash, you promised me that you saved my son. Now do it." Before they left, Thomas turned to Bruce and said something that cut deep in the best way. He told him, "You are my world," and then came to the part that shook Bruce. Thomas said he didn't want him to be Batman anymore. He wanted his son to find happiness, to live, and most importantly, to be a father to Damian. Bruce reached out, desperate to save his father and bring him with them, but it was too late. The cosmic treadmill activated, and Bruce and Barry disappeared. Just before the Flashpoint timeline collapsed completely, we finally get to see what Thomas whispered to young Bruce all those years ago in the Batcave. Sometimes we fall, son, but always remember, wings never stay down. Then it cuts right back to the present with everything around Thomas crumbling. He charges forward into oblivion, holding on to the last thread of purpose, and says, "We rise." And with that, he disappears too. But, plot twist. Reverse Flash shows up in less than a split second later and snatches Thomas right out of the collapsing timeline. This man is petty on another level. No wonder Barry offed him years ago. He never forgot that Thomas stabbed him through the chest, so now as punishment, Thawne drags Thomas into the main DC timeline, not to off him, but to torment him. His plan is to force Thomas to live, to watch Bruce continue being Batman, a fate worse than death to him, crafted out of pure spite. So since he's stuck in his timeline, Thomas watched Bruce from the shadows, silently observing his son's life unfold, including the moment he proposed to Selina. And this is where things take a hard nosedive, because the story arc is where the pure character assassination of Thomas Wayne happens. Instead of simply approaching Bruce like, "Hey, I never actually died thanks to Reverse Flash," and having a conversation about his choices as Batman, Thomas does the most ridiculous and counterproductive thing possible. He joins Bane and helps him mentally torture Bruce from behind the scenes. This really disgusted me beyond beliefs. Instead of protecting his family from Bane, this psychotic old-ass man helped Bane ruin Bruce's wedding and watched him whoop Bruce's ass, including breaking his back at Wayne Manor. I think that's the third or fourth time Bruce's back has been broken in comics. At this point, if this was real life, Bruce would be permanently paralyzed. Thomas then lets Bane take over Gotham while he heals and drags Bruce out of the country to the Middle Sands, where he plans to resurrect Martha using one of Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus pits, so they could be a family again. All of this just to stop Bruce from being Batman. Talk about being overly traumatic. Bruce wasn't having it though. Once they reach the bottom of the pit, Bruce throws the first punch at Thomas. He also reveals that while Thomas was sleeping, he hid Martha's body somewhere in the desert, and Thomas loses it. This is where pure plot armor kicks in. Thomas beats Bruce in the fight and came out of the pit. This part, geez, where do I even start? It frustrates me so much, and we not even at the part where it really gets my blood boiling. Don't worry, we'll get there, but as far as this part, there's no freaking way Thomas can beat Bruce in hand-to-hand fight, especially with the amount of experience, youth, and combat training Bruce has under his belt. No freaking way. So Thomas soon came back to Gotham as the official Batman, but this wasn't some noble return to form. It was a twisted version of the symbol. He brought Gotham Girl in as his Robin, Arnold Wesker, aka the ventriloquist, played the role of Alfred, and Hugo Strange took over as a stand-in for Commissioner Gordon. Thomas made himself comfortable in Wayne Manor, keeping the real Alfred hostage. And to make things worse, he issued a threat to the entire Bat family. If any one of them set foot in Gotham, Alfred dies. With Bane in control and Psycho Pirate manipulating the minds of Gotham's villains, the city had turned into a full-blown dystopia. Villains weren't just loose, they were acting as Gotham's police force, and they didn't play games. There's literally a panel showing a homeless man trying to steal an apple. Professor Pig catches him and ends his life right after. Later, Damian, being careless with no strategy, tried to sneak into the city to rescue Alfred and take Gotham back. But of course, he was caught by Thomas. Thomas tried to reason with Damian, but Damian wanted all of the smoke. He wasn't hearing anything from someone he saw as a fake Batman. The two fought, and while Thomas tried to hammer home the consequences of Damian's recklessness, the fight did not go in Damian's favor, which is complete BS. So Thomas knocked him out cold and tied him to a chair. Why, you ask? So he could force Damian to watch Bane stab Alfred's neck right in front of him, so Damian could see the consequences of his choices in real time. That moment traumatized Damian, and honestly, I'd argue it taught him a brutal but valuable lesson, which is his carelessness can directly cost the lives of the people he loves. If you guys and girls want to know what Damian did after this moment, check out the video linked in the top right corner of the video. So with Alfred dead, Damian became the new hostage. When the time came and Bruce came back to Gotham, Bane sent a message to Thomas, telling him to off Damian and display his body in public. Thomas heads down to the Batcave with a loaded gun ready to shoot Damian, but at the last second, he couldn't pull himself to do it, not at his own family. And to be frank, he shouldn't be doing all this in the first place. I can't tell you, I can't even describe what I'm feeling right now with how much I hate the writing for his character in this story arc. But don't worry, this will be rectified later on. I can't wait to go over that. So right after Thomas lowers his gun, the rest of the Bat family shows up, completely surrounding him. And this is the part I mentioned earlier that really gets under my skin. If you thought Thomas beating Bruce was pure plot armor and straight up BS, this part is like, hold my beer, I bet I could one-up that. The Bat family jumps him finally, but apparently Thomas gets back up and somehow turns the tables, beating them all. Now keep in mind who's in his group: Cassandra Cain, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, and Barbara Gordon. I don't care how gritty or determined Thomas is, there is no way he's taking down all 4 of them. That's not up for debate. Like, come on now, Cassandra alone is one of the deadliest fighters in the DC universe. Batman admitted himself that she's a better fighter than him, and that's saying something. Add in Tim's tactical genius, Damian's raw aggression and training, and Barbara's experience and adaptability. I guess the man is in his late 50s to early 60s. You gotta be kidding me. Now, I'll give Thomas a pass against Kate, Helena, and Duke, depending on the circumstances, but those first 4, absolutely not. Hell no. I refuse to believe that. That scene was pure plot armor on steroids. Those panels really disgust me as a Batman fan even to this day. After that complete disaster, Thomas set out with Wesker to fetch Bruce. This part is more of a nitpick for me, but I wish Bruce got his payback with breaking Bane's back before Thomas shot him. It is what it is though. Oh, and this part. So in Wayne Manor, Thomas has got to be one of the worst freaking parents ever, as he left Alfred's dead body in front of Bruce as he wakes up, traumatizing him once again as he lost another parent in his life. That was so unnecessary. I don't know how that got published. You don't do Alfred like that. So Thomas waited for Bruce to come into the room so they could have their final fight. The fight is as you would expect. Bruce is having a hard time fighting Thomas, which is I'm not even gonna say BS because you already know it is. So he lets Selena join in and gets the upper hand on Thomas. Even this still bothers me still because Bruce could take Thomas on by himself with barely any effort. Someone could say Bruce was holding back this whole time due to Thomas being his father, but if he still did that after finding out Alfred died, that would look bad for him. Thomas ended up pulling a gun on his own son, and Bruce gave his father a speech on him choosing Selena, happiness, family, and Batman. This was enough for Thomas to lower his weapon as he now knows that Bruce would never give up being Batman, and that leaves Bruce an opening to sucker punch him, knocking him out cold and sending him to Arkham Asylum. Oh, and guess who's in the same place with him? Yup, Bane. And boy, he is pissed off due to Thomas not keeping up with his end of their deal. As a consequence, Bane ended up breaking Thomas's back, leaving yet another major injury on top of the ones he already has from his fight with the Bat family. For some reason, Thomas is eventually extracted from Arkham by a mysterious figure named Extract and taken to an interdimensional prison ship. This man has so much plot armor, it's insane. At this point, I think his plot armor rivals Bruce's plot armor. Despite being captured, Thomas somehow escapes and crash lands on Earth 23, where he's discovered by the parents of that Earth Superman. Soon after, Thomas meets Earth 23 Superman, who also happens to be the president of that Earth. So for clarity's sake, we're just gonna call him President Superman. While trying to figure out how Thomas ended up there, the two of them investigate a fragment of the prison ship that crash landed on Earth 22. During this mission, President Superman tells Thomas that once everything's sorted out, he'll send him back to Earth Zero, which is another name for DC's main Earth. But Thomas refuses. He admits he doesn't want to go back, not after everything he did during the City of Bane story arc. He feels guilty for what he put Bruce and the rest of the Bat family through, and honestly, props to the writer for giving Thomas some accountability. After all that mess and the complete character assassination he went through, this was a good first step. Now, this isn't where his big redemption arc fully kicks in, but like I said before, it's a start. We're getting there though. Flashpoint Beyond is where we really see Thomas' character growth come full circle, but there's still a little bit to cover before we get there, so let's keep going. Thomas stuck around with President Superman and the rest of the Justice Incarnate as they work to uncover the strange happenings within the multiverse. Now, this is all part of the build up to DC's Dark Crisis, which we don't really need to dive into here, but there are two specific moments during this adventure that really stands out for Thomas' arc. The first is when he tells Harbinger to show him all the versions of Bruce across the multiverse, and when he sees them, he finally comes to a powerful realization that he was wrong for ever telling Bruce not to be Batman. In that moment, Thomas acknowledges that being Batman is not just Bruce's role, it's who he is. He sees Bruce surrounded by the Bat family and understands that this path, no matter how painful, gives Bruce purpose. The second moment happens during the battle against Darkseid and the Injustice Incarnate. Thomas is badly wounded, clinging to life, but even in that state, he begins to sign the names of all of Bruce's children, including Dick, Jason, Tim, Damian, Cassandra, Duke, and he admits that he failed them all once, and now he's willing to do everything in his power to protect them. Both of these moments are huge. They show how deeply Thomas regrets his past actions, and more importantly, how far he's willing to go to make things right. He doesn't care about redeeming himself, all he cares about is keeping his family safe. Thomas went on another mission with the Justice Incarnate in an effort to rescue Barry Allen until things went left, and he was eventually consumed by the Great Darkness. Darkseid pulled a final crisis on Thomas and uses Omega Beams on him, but just like Bruce, Thomas didn't die from Darkseid's Omega Beams, thanks to his plot armor. He ended up back in the Flashpoint timeline. Now, this is where Flashpoint Beyond begins, and boy is it good. It turns out Bruce is the reason Thomas is still alive and back in his own timeline. How, you guys and girls ask? Well, Bruce stole some artifacts from the Time Masters and trapped the Flashpoint timeline within the snow globe to preserve it. It was the only way to keep Thomas alive. Oswald soon wakes up Thomas, who's disoriented and confused. The first question on his mind is how is he back within his own timeline? Last he remembers, he was hit by Darkseid's Omega beams, and yet here he is, alive, in a Flashpoint timeline no less. A timeline that shouldn't even exist anymore, but he doesn't have time to process it, because Judge Harvey Dent bursts in his office, furious and broken, blaming Thomas for everything that's happened to his family. Come to find out, things have taken a devastating turn for Harvey's family. Harvey's daughter Debbie took her own life, traumatized after everything Martha put her through. His wife Gilda has lost her mind, spiraling into madness because of her obsession with Martha. Harvey demands that Thomas go speak to Gilda and try to help her regain her sanity, but he's not focused on that at all. His mind is locked in on the bigger question: how is the Flashpoint timeline still alive? Thomas wastes no time, and determined to get answers, he looks up Barry Allen's address, but while searching, he notices something unsettling written on the chalkboard behind him that says everything matters. He thought the Reverse Flash was behind this as part of his revenge for Thomas stabbing him through his chest. Thomas's frustration boils over. Everything matters? No, not here. Nothing matters here. Nothing matters, he yells, right before punching the chalkboard to pieces and storming out in search for Barry Allen. When he finds him, it's revealed that this version of Barry never gained his powers, but he still works as a forensic scientist at the Central City Police Department. By the time Barry arrives at his apartment, Thomas is already waiting for him inside. He's desperate, trying to see if Barry recognizes him, remembers anything about his time as a Flash. Thomas is convinced someone messed with the timeline again, and he needs Barry's help to go back in time and stop Flashpoint. When Barry didn't believe him, Thomas knocks him out with a sedative and takes him to the highest building in Gotham, setting up the exact conditions needed to recreate the lightning strike that originally gave Barry his powers. But something goes horribly wrong. Just as everything is in place, a harpoon is suddenly fired, shattering the vat of chemicals. In the chaos, lightning strikes Barry dead on, and without the chemical mixture, he doesn't gain his powers. Instead, he dies instantly. A few moments later, Oswald contacts Thomas with urgent news. Judge Dent and the GCPD are headed to the Wayne Casino to arrest him for the alleged murder of Joe Chill. But before Thomas can even process that, a sudden explosion rocks the area. The blast leaves devastation in his wake, and Judge Dent is dead. His son Dexter was trapped inside the wreckage. Batman arrives just in time to save him, the only survivor of the incident. While being pulled from the wreck, Dexter points out the man responsible. Batman zeroes in on the assassin and quickly connects the dots, that this has to be the same person who sabotaged Barry's transformation and took his life. Batman corners the assassin, who's revealed to be an Atlantean. Thomas demands answers. How does Aquaman know about Barry Allen? But the assassin refuses to talk. Instead, he boasts about his love for offing men, women, children. It doesn't matter to him. That alone is enough to push Thomas to the edge. But then the assassin pushes his luck and says something that snaps the last thread of restraint for Thomas. Have you ever watched a child die? That line breaks Thomas. The memory of Bruce, of all the pain he's lived through, it hits like a tidal wave. In pure rage, Batman snaps. He grabs the assassin and slams his head into the wall again and again until there's nothing left. He tried to hold back, he really did, but that line just crossed a boundary that Thomas Wayne would never come back from. When Thomas returns to the scene of the explosion, the fire has already been put out, and only smoldering wreckage remains. Thomas quietly asks the commissioner on site what happens to the boy now. The commissioner responded that Dexter will go to child services, but Thomas has an idea in mind, leading him to take Dexter in. Later, back at Wayne Manor, Thomas and Dexter sit across from each other, eating in awkward silence. The trauma still lingers in the air, and just then Oswald walks in. Having answered Thomas's earlier call, Thomas has a mission to complete, but he doesn't want to leave Dexter alone, so he tells Oswald to stay behind and look after the boy while he suits up and heads to Atlantis. He needs answers. Once there, he discovers Wonder Woman bound and trapped by her own lasso of truth. Turns out, after Aquaman and the Atlanteans won the war, they captured her and the other Amazons. Thomas wastes no time. He proposes a deal. Let him borrow the lasso, and in return, Diana gets to live. She agrees, that in the throne room, Aquaman sits quietly. Batman appears behind Aquaman and wraps the lasso of truth around his neck. Arthur reacts fast, throwing Thomas across the room, but Thomas never lets go of the lasso. While gripping it tight, he demands the truth, and he gets it. Aquaman wasn't the one who sent the assassin. At the same time, Oswald contacts Thomas with even more bad news. The Wayne Casino has just been blown up. That's the moment everything clicks. Thomas realizes he's been played. Whoever is behind all this wanted him distracted, kept him busy, chasing false leads while the real threat moved in the shadows. Aquaman warns Thomas of the consequences of freeing Wonder Woman, trying to reassert control over the situation, until he suddenly realizes something. His trident is gone. A second later, Diana drives it straight through his chest, offing him with his own weapon, and just like that, Aquaman is dead. With cold clarity, Wonder Woman declares that the deal is fulfilled and makes it clear she's not finished. She promises to come for the rest of the world. Thomas doesn't care at all. He got what he came for, the truth. And as he turns to leave, he simply says nothing matters here. Thomas heads back to Wayne Manor and he comes across Oswald teaching Dexter how to shoot a gun. Thomas wanted a word with Oswald. He needed access to the security footage to find out who was responsible for blowing up the Wayne Casino. Oswald mentioned that the security footage was disabled, but asked Thomas if he's gonna make whoever did this pay since there was some good people that died in the explosion. Thomas simply responded with, "Don't I always?" Later, Thomas and Oswald have another conversation. Oswald lets him know that the commissioner wants to speak with him, and he raises a valid concern. Whoever blew up the Wayne Casino might know Thomas as Batman. The casino was the main source of income funding his vigilante activities, so the attack felt personal. Their conversation is cut short when Thomas notices Dexter staring out the window. Oswald casually mentions that the boy now wants to learn about explosives after hearing about the casino bombing. This boy wanted to learn about guns and now explosives is very questionable, but then again, he's not in a normal household anymore. And Thomas, he barely reacts, and he's just like, okay, then teach him. Then moves on with his day like it's nothing. At the ruins of the casino, the commissioner tells Thomas that there's no hope of finding survivors, and Thomas just brushed it off saying it's not important. Geez, this man is a savage, and he just left it ambiguous for the commissioner to figure out before changing the subject. This guy is cold, and the only thing that grabs his attention is when the commissioner brings up Psycho Pirate. Everyone else thinks the guy's crazy, but Thomas knows better. With everything he's seen across the multiverse, he knows the truth can sometimes sound like madness. So as Batman, he has to Arkham to pay Psycho Pirate a visit, only to find him already dead in a cell, strangled by his own bed sheets and hanging. Another mystery, more questions than answers. Suddenly, Gilda Dent calls out to him. She's figured it out, that Thomas Wayne is Batman. She asks him about Dexter, clearly trying to draw emotion from him. Thomas recounts what he witnessed the day Harvey died, but keeps his distance, shifting the conversation to Psycho Pirate. Gilda didn't see anything, but she heard him die, strangled, just like Debbie when she took her own life. And then, she flips the switch. She tries to play mind games, poking at Thomas's guilt, until she lands a direct hit. You were always a bad father, and that sets him off. He loses his composure and punches the glass on her cell door. Gilda smirks, unfazed, and then goes even further, smashing her own head into the glass repeatedly until half her face is shredded and scarred. Guys and girls, I'd like to introduce y'all to the Two-Face of the Flashpoint timeline, and it's beautiful. Damn, this story is good. Y'all gotta read Flashpoint Beyond for yourselves. I'm not going over the whole story since I'm only going over just Thomas's part, but trust me, the dialogue, the pacing is so good. But moving on, Batman runs across the rooftops of Gotham during a storm, thinking to himself on how all what's going on around him doesn't matter. He doesn't care at all, as he still plans to find a way to erase his timeline. He stares at the city until he hears a woman call for help. He suddenly drops down on the criminals in the alleyway. He beats all of them, feeling like his old self again. Thomas then pulls the gun on one of the thugs, ready to end it. Under his breath, he mutters to himself, this won't matter. But before he could pull the trigger, he slammed into a garage door by none other than Flashpoint Superman. His first words to Batman, I heard you. You're wrong. Everything matters. The thug panics and fires at Superman, only to freeze when Superman gives him a look that could stop time itself. Terrified, the thug bolts. Superman turns back to Batman and says he needs his help, but Thomas doesn't care. He has other priorities. He resists, even going as far as punches Superman to prove a point, and shockingly, he makes him bleed. Superman, clearly not amused, responds with a single smack, dropping Thomas cold. And you gotta admit, for a man in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, I'm guessing, Thomas Wayne is strong as hell. He's not just stubborn, he's still got that fight in him. Thomas eventually wakes up, wrapped in bandages, and standing in front of him is Poison Ivy, alive and well, which is wild considering she was previously believed to be dead. Thomas wonders where he's at, and Poison Ivy reveals that he's in the Oasis, a lush sanctuary created by Swamp Thing, based on an idea from Superman. You could think of it as the Flashpoint timeline's version of the Fortress of Solitude. Superman explains that he needs Batman's help. A Kryptonian invasion is heading towards Earth in 5 days. Even more shocking, Jor-El is still alive, and he left a message letting Superman know about the incoming threat. Superman shows the message to Batman, hoping to inspire him to lead Earth's defense. They need him, just like when he helped out in the fight against Aquaman and Wonder Woman in the original Flashpoint War. Thomas is genuinely shocked. Superman, of all people, after everything he's endured, years of isolation, torture, and being treated like a lab rat, still wants to defend Earth. He believes in his people, in his potential. After hearing Superman's reasoning for his beliefs, Thomas turns him down. He's not here to save the world. He has unfinished business back in Gotham, and he's still trying to change the past so this timeline can be erased. After leaving the Oasis, he gets word that Dawn's body has been moved to the morgue. Without wasting a second, Thomas heads there and begins a full-on autopsy, determined to dig out the truth from the body of the Reverse Flash. That's when he finds something that doesn't belong there. Gears, buried inside Dawn's body, clockwork components that clearly tie back to something, or someone. He takes them back to Wayne Manor, intending to piece them together and figure out where they came from. But when he pulls up to the manor, Oswald is already waiting outside, silent. Thomas can tell from the silence something was wrong, and question where Dexter is. To answer that question real quick, Dexter went to Arkham in order to rescue his mom after learning that people who stay there are broken down mentally. Meanwhile, down in the Batcave, Thomas is hunched over the pieces of the mysterious clockwork mechanism, trying to piece together the truth behind everything. Oswald, watching this unfold, urges him to go after Dexter, but Thomas won't budge. When Oswald demands an answer, Thomas gave his response that he couldn't and he needed to put the clock together first. That was the last straw. Oswald, already emotionally invested in the boy, loses it. He reminds Thomas that Dexter has lost too much and is now walking to one of the darkest places imaginable. The boy didn't need to see his mother, who's already lost in madness. Thomas, already numb and emotionally checked out, replies coldly, it doesn't matter. After putting the pieces together, Thomas figures out who's behind everything. It was the Joker, who reveals herself in front of Dexter and Gilda in Arkham. Without hesitation, Thomas suits up and tears through the streets of Gotham as fast as he can to Arkham. During the drive, Oswald called and letting Batman know that Judge Dent was holding on to a dark secret Gilda had. Gilda was the one that ended Debbie Dent's life. What a plot twist, right? She offed her own daughter, and Oswald told Batman to keep Dexter away from her. Thomas responded once again with "it doesn't matter," still believing that he could change the timeline. But Oswald wasn't hearing what Thomas was trying to say to him. All he cared about was Dexter's well-being, showing how much he cared for the boy after their time spent together. Thomas ends the call and breaks into Arkham right before Joker attempts to harm Dexter. He confronts Martha, demanding answers. Why, he asks. He wonders why did she off all the people who could change the past, but Martha doesn't answer. Footsteps echo in the distance as security guards approach. Without hesitation, Thomas locks them both inside a cell. He needs answers, and he's not letting her slip away again. He pushes her. How is she even alive? She responds with a question of her own. When are you talking about? Martha begins to explain. She tells Thomas that she listened to everything Psycho Pirate had to say. The moment he mentioned Bruce caught her attention. Once she got what she needed from him, she offed him too. Alright, let's pause for a minute. Is anybody wondering how Martha was able to off the Reverse Flash? I mean, it's cool to remind readers how dangerous she could be, but how is that even possible? Make that make sense to me. I need some answers on that most of all. Anyways, she then leads Thomas down a hidden stairwell, talking as they descend. She even talks about the Joker we all know from the main timeline, including his origin and his real name, which was one of the biggest mysteries ever in comics. I actually posted that as a nerd fact a few days ago, and to save y'all the trouble of scrolling down my channel's community tab, here's a nerd fact right here. Suddenly, she appears behind Thomas and stabs him. He collapses, crashing through a crumbling floor. He forces himself to get back up, and what he sees next stops him in his tracks. Martha standing in front of him with a time spear. She reveals the truth. She never actually died after falling into the Batcave. Instead, she found an underground stream that carried her to the depths of Arkham. That's where she first heard Psycho Pirate's voice. This world shouldn't be, he echoes. That was the moment it all clicked for her. She knew this timeline was broken, and she knew exactly what she had to do. She began eliminating everyone who could fix the past, not out of madness, but to stall for time. Time to build a time spear. Now she wants Thomas to come with her, back in time. Together they could sacrifice themselves to save Bruce's life, but at the cost of sacrificing the entire universe. Thomas approaches her, leading in for a kiss, but stops just short. He hesitates because deep down, he knows this is wrong. He thinks of Barry Allen, of the innocent people in this casino that died, of everyone who's died because of their obsession with rewriting the past. And when Martha questions his hesitation, she spits back his own words at him, coldly, almost mockingly. You said it yourself, Thomas, many times over. Nothing matters here. Suddenly, Gilda then appears, gun pressed to Dexter's head. Martha steps into the time spear, ready to activate it, while Thomas stands still and silent. Dexter asks Thomas what will happen to him if they go back in time, and Thomas responded that he wouldn't exist. Thomas looks back at Martha, telling her that they can't do this. He thinks about Dexter. Martha pleads for him to go with her, but he doesn't. He tells her that they didn't have a choice to save Bruce 30 years ago in Crime Alley, but they do have the choice to save Dexter. This is the moment where he realizes that everything matters. He turns away from Martha and lunges at Gilda to save Dexter, but it's too late. Gilda hits a detonator, triggering a bomb next to Thomas. The blast destroys the time spear and leaves him wounded. Gilda raises the gun again, aiming it at Dexter's head, ready to finish it, but then Martha intervenes. She grabs the gun from Gilda and without hesitation shoots her in the head, offing her instantly. Thomas struggles back to his feet, and the three of them escape Arkham just as the building collapses behind them. They make it to a nearby rooftop, watching as the remains of Arkham crumble into the night. Dexter holds both their hands, and in that moment, Thomas and Martha gain the sun again. Time passes, and back in the Batcave, Thomas helps Dexter suit up, officially giving him his name, Robin. Thomas says it's a family name, and standing nearby is Martha, watching from her own room within the cave. Thomas hopes that in time, he can rehabilitate her, that maybe, just maybe, there's a path to redemption for her. But for now, Batman and Robin of the Flashpoint timeline ride out, side by side, heading into battle to stop the Kryptonian invasion. Not for vengeance, not for the past, but for the future, giving Thomas a new sense of purpose. And that's about it for Flashpoint Batman. So we're gonna move on to his skills and abilities, starting with genius level intellect, as Thomas is more focused on medical and tactical knowledge than detective work. He's a master at hand-to-hand combat, as he's way more aggressive than Bruce is at combat by using brutal force and lethal intent. He's an expert marksman. He has peak human conditioning such as excellent strength, speed, stamina, agility, and reflexes for a man his age. And let me add endurance in there too, since this man can take a hit. Trust me. He's a master strategist and tactician. He's good at interrogation and has intimidation methods. As far as his equipment, he has dual handguns, a modified bat suit that carries more armor than Bruce's suit. He has a utility belt that contains knives, grenades, batarangs, medical supplies, etc. He uses stealth tech such as night vision, grappling devices, and various surveillance gear. As far as his weaknesses, Thomas's willingness to end lives makes him feared. It also also alienates allies and leads to ruthless decisions that backfire. He lacks the moral restraint of Bruce, making him vulnerable to emotional manipulation and revenge-driven actions. He's easily triggered and becomes reckless by anything related to Bruce, a weakness enemies can exploit and use to manipulate him. He lacks Bruce's expert detective skills, and though in peak condition for his age, Thomas is still physically slower, less durable, and more vulnerable in long-term fights. Unlike Bruce, Thomas isn't prepared for every possible scenario, and he has poor teamwork and trust issues. Moving on to nerd facts. In the retelling of Thomas's origin during the City of Bane storyline, it's shown that he took out Bane, Mr. Freeze, Kite Man, and the Riddler in the Flashpoint timeline. Before heading into the final battle during the original Flashpoint story, Cyborg pointed out that they needed Thomas, not just because he's the best tactician in the world, but because everyone who's heard stories about him as Batman believes he's invincible. And honestly, that's really impressive when you consider that Thomas isn't as skilled, trained, or refined as Bruce. But there's a different kind of fear that follows Thomas Wayne. I think the legends about him carry more weight because he doesn't hold back. He doesn't hesitate. And unlike Bruce, Thomas has no problem offering criminals that deserve it. That kind of reputation makes people think twice. And that fear, it's a weapon all on its own. In Flashpoint Beyond, the content in the letter Thomas had Barry give to Bruce is revealed, and it says, "Dear son, there's only one thing I know about life. I know some things happen by chance, and some things happen because we make them happen." Barry Allen was once haunted by the past, but when he became the Flash, he left the ghosts behind. He found love, a family, and for the first time ever, friends. Barry thought yesterday was behind him, but somebody wouldn't let him escape it. When Barry came to me for help, I turned him away. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm a man who's been corrupted by his own unbearable pain. I'm a man who has too much blood on his hands to be called good. I'm a man who had nothing left to live for until the day I met the Flash. Your friend taught me we can't only live a life for those we've lost. We have to live a life for those we still have. If I got a second chance, I will hope I'd come to understand that. To live that, like you should, Bruce. That's all parents want for their children. What we never had. Your mother and I want you to be happy. Promise me you'll try. And I will too, wherever I am. Love always, your father, Thomas. Damn, now we know why Bruce broke down emotionally. That letter was deep. So moving on to personal thoughts. Besides the pure character assassination in the City of Bane storyline, Flashpoint Batman is such a refreshing twist in the Batman mythology. I love that it gave the what-if scenario of what happens if Thomas and Martha Wayne lives instead of Bruce, and made it canon, giving us such a dark twist and tons of potential stories in a separate timeline. I do wonder when there'll be another series since Flashpoint Beyond ended off with the Kryptonian invasion taking place on Earth. It's been over 2 years since Flashpoint Beyond. We need a continuation ASAP. Or maybe we can get another miniseries where it tells the story of how Thomas became Batman in the first place. What did he do to become as deadly as he is? How did he come up with the idea? Who did he meet throughout his journey? In Batman issue 74, Thomas did mention that he met Ra's al Ghul in his timeline, so I wonder if he helped train him in various forms of martial arts and weaponry. There's still so many plot holes and stories to explore, past and present for Thomas. One can only hope to see more stories in the future involving him though. Besides all that, if you were entertained, thought it was educational, like what I said, or all the above, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment, and turn on post notifications, especially if you're a new viewer. If you want to support the channel even more, my links will be down in the description box below, and I'll talk to you guys and girls later. Peace.